And I want to welcome you to Facebook Live as well as being here in person to our Course in Miracles, And today we're going to continue to talk about letting go of the past and finding the present, being in the present, being in the now. How do you allow yourself to be 100% in the now, especially in terms of the relationships that you have with everybody around you? So if you want to let go of the past, if you want to have a new relationship to time, then that's what we're going to be talking about from the Course in Miracles today. And I want to thank you, those of you who are also in the house today. And I'm going to start out with our theme song, which is one of the Course in Miracles lessons, which is, I am not a victim of the world I see. So this is my brother John Christmas. If you like this music, you can download it from his website, johnchristmas.com, at no charge. And so as people come in and they're getting settled, let's start out. Remember that I love to be sincere, but not serious. So this is what we're going to do today. So here we go. I see, I'm not a victim of the... Pay attention to the lyrics. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim, no, of the world I see. You're not a victim of the world you see. I'm not a victim of my mom. I'm not a victim of my pa. I'm not a victim of circumstance at all. I'm not a victim of the world I see. Cause what's happening now is what I done to me. I'm not a victim of the future, not a victim of the past, not a victim of anything that really doesn't last. I'm not a victim, remember that, of the world I see. Not a victim of the world I see. Cause what's happening now is what I done to me. That includes the good stuff. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim. Say what? Of the world I see. I'm not a victim, no, of the world I see. Now remember, the past, Course in Miracles has one lesson that says, the past is over. It can touch me not. The past is over. It can touch you not. The past is over. It can touch you not. Past means gone, and the gone is over, and the gone, we say in the South, the gone is over. I'm not a victim of the North, I'm not a victim of the South, not a victim of anything, so what comes out my mouth. I'm not a victim of the world I see. Cause what's happening now is what I done to me. Say yeah. Come out now. I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim, no, of the world I see. Yeah. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim of the world I see. I'm not a victim of the world I see. So I like that. The Course in Miracles teaches that perception is interpretation. I love that definition of perception. That it's my interpretation. That perception is interpretation. And not only is perception interpretation, it says perception is learning. So you see you see how you have learned to see. You see how you have learned to see. What's up? Good to see y'all. Y'all. So we're going to start out, I always start out my classes with the guidelines for the Course in Miracles. At the beginning of the workbook in the Course in Miracles, it tells you the attitudes that you need to take if you're going to do the workbook lessons. But I see that as the attitude to take if you're doing the Course in Miracles, period. So the Course in Miracles tells you how to approach the Course in Miracles. So if you look at the beginning of the workbook, it says, remember only this. You need not believe the ideas. You need not believe the ideas. You need not believe the ideas that I'm giving you from A Course in Miracles. Then it says you need not accept the ideas. So that's the next instruction. You need not believe it. You need not accept it. And then the next sentence it says in the introduction of the workbook is you need not even welcome the ideas. Some of the ideas you may actively resist. Some of the ideas you may actively resist. Some of the ideas, it says, you will find hard to believe. So there's some of the things from A Course in Miracles that a person may find hard to believe. You might go, that's hard to believe. So if you find yourself saying that, know that the Course in Miracles already said you might find some of the ideas hard to believe. Some of the comments that I get from people online often is, one of the reasons they were willing to listen to my presentation was because I told them they didn't have to. They didn't have to believe it. They didn't have to welcome it. They didn't have to accept it. That they might have some resistance to it. That they may find some of it hard to believe. And then it says, and others may seem to be quite startling. So you're also told that you might have a startling reaction to the Course in Miracles. And over the last 43 years of teaching and learning in the Course in Miracles, I've definitely seen that reaction many times. And then it says something really awesome. It says you're not asked to judge the ideas at all. So the Course is saying, I'm not asking you to judge the ideas. I'm not asking you to analyze the ideas. It actually says in the text, the ego analyzes and the Holy Spirit accepts. So it defines, one of the definitions of ego is wrong-mindedness. And so it says, well, wrong-mindedness, as far as the Course is concerned, analyzes. And right-mindedness, which is the Holy Spirit, says accepts. So I don't analyze the Course in Miracles. What I try to do more than anything is just be a messenger and say what the Course itself says, which is over and over and over again, hundreds of times. It says, remember or don't forget. You'll hear that over and over again as you study the Course. Almost every page, he'll say, remember this, or don't forget this. So really it's about, will I remember what Spirit is telling me, and will I apply what Spirit is telling me? More so, am I going to analyze what Spirit is telling me, and do I need to understand what it's telling me? Because it also says in the Course that our understanding is not a powerful contribution to the truth and doesn't make it what it is. So our understanding is not what's necessary. It's remembering the instructions and then applying it. The other thing it says is, so how then a person might ask, well, how would I know if it's true? Got the answer right out of that paragraph. It says, you are not asked to judge the ideas at all. It says, their use will give the ideas meaning to you, and using the ideas will show you that the ideas are true. Using the ideas will show you that the ideas are true. What is it that will show a person that the ideas are true? Using the ideas will show you that the ideas are true. Analyzing the ideas will not show you the ideas are true. Using the ideas will show you that the ideas are true. My emphasis all over the years has been on the practical application of the Course. To me, if I can apply something to my everyday life and my everyday perception of life, what practical use is it to me, right? And so I'm going to always use the principles of the Course in Miracles in any situation that I'm in. And even though it's talking about removing the blocks to love and forgiveness, but it's also giving us universal principles and perceptions that we should use in any situation that we're in. I spent about 2 or 3 hours just yesterday on one section, how is the healing accomplished? Because I had some issues and some things that I wanted to re-perceive in my own experience. And so I know that one of the tendencies with the Course in Miracles is to read it and forget what you read. To read the book and then close the book and then have a hard time remembering what you just got through reading. So the emphasis for me, the test was how many things that I was instructed to do and how is healing accomplished that I would remember specifically that the Course in Miracles was telling me. Not me give it my interpretation, but what was the instruction? Like the first line talks about and how is healing accomplished, it talks about how, you're going to be healed to the extent that you see the valuelessness of you going through the pain or whatever you're going through. And that if I hang on to it, it's because it's giving me something of value to me that I think is more valuable than using the truth at that particular point. So I need to remember that. I need to remember that the reason why I'm having a hard time letting go of something is there's something I'm getting out of it and some payoff in it that I'm not ready to give up yet. So I need to remember that. Or it says in that section, you can say to yourself, if you're going through something, you can tell yourself there's no gain at all to me in this. That there's no benefit. He said then if you were to do that, there wouldn't be anything that wouldn't be healed immediately. But then the mind goes, well, I can say there's no gain at all to me in this and still feel like I'm dealing with the problem. But he says, well, that's because you got to accept certain things first before you'll say that it really makes a difference. And then he goes on to say, number one, you need to recognize that the sickness or whatever you're going through is not of the body, that it's a decision that your mind has made, that your mind is the physician. So if I haven't gotten to the point that I've accepted that my mind is the physician and my mind is the decision maker, then of course I'm not going to say there's no gain at all to me in this and have an instant healing. I have not gotten to the point that I'm accepting what I'm being told. So I'm just going to tell you that the Course teaches that it's profoundly simple. It's not hard. It's just very different. And do you know the Course also teaches that complexity is the smoke screen that hides the truth. It's the smoke screen that hides the truth. It's not really complex, but it's the idea of complexity that sometimes keeps a person from going ahead and applying. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, the other thing to keep in mind is that the Course, first and foremost, is working with our perception, and that it's working with our thoughts and our perceptions. So that's where the answer, the problem is there in the mind and the answer is there in the mind. Sometimes I almost wish that people would come in with really intense things that they're dealing with, because sometimes when people are really suffering or going through something that they really want to change about, that's when they're most focused on getting the answer. Right. If I really have an issue that I'm dealing with and I'm ready to be happy more than I want to be right, then I'm going to be open to the solution that you're giving me. If I'm entertaining myself through it, if I'm a person that just likes to play with ideas, like the Course says, play with metaphysical thoughts and it's just fun to talk about it, well, it's going to be kind of challenging with the Course because it already says the ego is going to tell you to go to sleep, forget it, or die. So that's what happens a lot of times when you're teaching the Course, right? You see people go to sleep, which I recommend the Course in Miracles to anybody who has insomnia. Right? I always tell people, if you got insomnia. The other thing is people are so doggone serious. You're so serious about the truth. So you can't have any levity. You can't have any joke because you're serious, about the truth. And then the Course said, well, that's how your butt got here in the first place. That was a joke you forgot to laugh at. You took it as a serious idea. You thought it could happen. So lighten up. That's why angels fly. They take themselves lightly. We're too heavy. We're too heavy with this stuff, man. It just blows my mind. I'm going to the truth class. You wonder why especially younger people don't show up. It's no fun. It's no joy, So God's will for us is perfect happiness. I love how the Course says your function and your happiness are the same thing. So how can I tell when I'm fulfilling my function? It's in direct relationship to how much joy and happiness that I'm having and experiencing. It's not complicated. So we've been talking about finding the past, and then it says it's the use of the ideas will give the ideas meaning to you and will show you that the ideas are true. So if you use it, it will show you that it's true, and that's true. I've never actually applied an idea in the Course in Miracles and not felt some kind of relief, because it teaches you that you cannot hear the voice of the Holy Spirit, you cannot hear the voice of truth. Right? It says, unless you are free of fear and conflict, you don't hear the voice. So the number one requirement is peace. That's what I'm seeking now. I'm going to cut out the middleman. I used to think if I had the house, I'd have the peace. If I had the car, I'd have the peace. If I had the special relationship, I'd have the peace. If I got the money, I'd have the peace. If my fantasy was acted out, I would have the peace. Well, I was interjecting a middleman. So I'm wanting things because ultimately I think it's going to make me happy and give me peace, right? So why don't I just go directly for peace? Then I might not have to try to come up with the money for the Denver housing market, which is like, the median price is $600,000, right? So if I say that I couldn't be happy until I got a house in Denver, I might be gone, y'all, before. Y'all might have gone to Earl's funeral before his happiness happened. But if you've been on the planet for more than 40 years, which I think most of us in here have, you know and I know that you always get something in the outer world that you think you want, and then there's a part of you that's either not satisfied or immediately comes up with the next thing it wants you to get. You're old enough to know that. You're old enough to know that there's nothing that we get in the physical material dream that gives us lasting satisfaction, right? So that's because the way that you feel is coming from the meaning that you're given. It says in lesson 2 in the workbook, everything I see, I give everything I see all the meaning that it has for me. So it's the meaning that I'm giving things that determine how I feel. Right? So if you give me a meaning that upsets you, then you'll feel upset around me. If you give me a meaning that Earl is a cool guy to be around and I'm going to appreciate him, then when you see me, you'll feel peace about it. So that's what we want to keep in mind, is that your happiness is always going to come from the interpretation and the meaning that you're giving everything. Then people go, well, okay, how do I get a new meaning? Well, I said, well, that's the whole nature of the Course. The Course is about teaching you new interpretations. If you're a Course in Miracles student, then you say that's your path to God, it's not the only one, but it's your path, then right in the book, it's giving you the new interpretations and meanings that you should give to everything that's happening in your life. So you don't have to figure out the new way of seeing things that will give you peace. You already have it right before you if you have the book. If you really are not, how do you just say, if what you're going through, you're getting some kind of payoff that you're not ready to give up yet, then you won't have the discipline and the focus on it to focus in on it. Like finding the present. This is on page 250 in the text, chapter 13, and we've already started on that. And I'm going to start off at paragraph 4.
Excuse me, can I grab one of them?
Yeah, that's the loaner copies by all means. Okay, and all my classes are very book intensive, and so because what happens when people are reading the Course, sometimes the biggest temptation is to project your interpretation of what it means rather than realize it explains itself as it's written. And so I teach in a question and answer format. Like, for instance, the paragraph 4 says, time can release as well as imprison. I would say, do you know that time can release as well as imprison? Questions hook the mind, statements put the mind to sleep. The question will hook the mind. Time can release as well as imprison. Do you know that time can release as well as imprison, huh? See, the Course works with the way our mind is already programmed. We already deal with things in terms of the law of self-preservation, right? People tend to look out for themselves first, right? So if I approach it and I tell you that the way that you can best look out for yourself is to remember that everything is a call for love, and that's what's going to give you more peace, it would be much more attractive than if I told you forgiveness will keep you from hurting and attacking yourself. Then the average person would be more likely to forgive than if I told you forgiveness is all about making your enemy feel better. right? The Course in Miracles says when you have a lot of anger, guilt, and grievances, it says in one of the workbook lessons, you're supposed to say after you get through saying what's upsetting you and making you angry, it says you should say to yourself, this thought is an attack upon myself. That this thought is an attack upon myself. So a lot of times when I find myself making myself upset, then the Course, that voice says, then I go, okay, that's just attacking me. So what's the point of holding on to this if I'm attacking myself, right? I know people who won't let themselves some people won't let themselves have a new relationship, and they don't extend to anybody anymore because of what happened to them in the previous one and the grievance that they're having toward the ex-partner, right? So they're all mad, they're all upset, every time they think about that person, they attack themselves with anger, guilt, and grievances. For all they know, their ex could be in Hawaii right now, who's dancing down the beach, having a good time, totally unaware of their upset, right? So who are you really hurting? Yourself. And I have seen very few people who won't agree with the logic of that, right? But still hold on to the grievance. So why would you still hold on to something that you knew was hurting you? Well, there's a part of you that wants to hurt you. There's a part of you that hasn't forgiven you. It's really you want to make you suffer. Or else you would go, for the sake of my own peace, without you, I'm going to change my mind. So why am I hanging on to it? Because there's some part of me that's getting some kind of a payoff out of holding on to that grievance, right? I can also use it as an excuse not to extend because I'm afraid, right? So what am I doing? The Course says, well, you're using the past. You're taking this free moment and you're interpreting it in terms of what you went through in the past. Then you feel bad now. Then you project it into the future. So now you think your next relationship has to be the way the past one was. Again, I'm going to make it practical. So when it says that you know that time can release as well as imprison, then it also answers whether time imprisons a person or frees a person. So what is it that makes you use time in a way that imprisons you, and what could make you use time in a way that frees or releases you? Well, is your interpretation of how you should use time that either releases you or it imprisons you. So I am going to use time to either imprison myself, which is to give myself fear. I'm going to use time to give myself love, and I'm going to use myself peace. Give myself peace. I'm going to show you the practical application of the Course. Before I came in the room, he said, you need to decide in advance what you want to happen in the situation. Why? He says, because once you decide what you want to happen in the situation, you'll see the situation as a means to make that happen. I came here to be a means for the Course in Miracles to come through me to those who are open to that. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, okay? You'll never be everybody's cup of tea at the ego level. But I love how the Course says in the Manual for Teachers that the people will be sent to you that the way you do it is best for them at their level of understanding. So the people that I know that I'm supposed to work with, the way that it comes through me, they'll go, that works for me. And you see what I'm saying? Then there'll be some people that come in and they go, Earl Purdy, I'd rather jump off a cliff before I go to another one of his classes. Okay, that's my hint that they're probably not the ones that I'm supposed to be working with. So I wouldn't spend 5 minutes trying to get them to come to my class. I would give 100% of my love and attention and focus on those who are open and receptive. I love how the Course just makes so much sense to me. Like it says, Spirit is going to ask you to do what you're willing and able to do, because then it'll get done. Helen asked that one time, basically, why was I chosen? And Jesus said, because I knew you'd do it. That's why. I knew you would do it. Right? So I don't invest any time in trying to get anybody to do something for me that they don't want to do, because by definition to me, that lets me know they're not the ones that's being sent by the Holy Spirit. So there's no need to do that. Practical application of the principles, right? So past, present, and future are not continuous. What the past, the present, and the future are not continuous. Now, let's have some fun with it. What did the Course in Miracles say the past was? What's gone, right? And then it says the present, which is now, and the future, which it defines as not yet. Okay, so when I say I want stuff in the future to make the Course practical to me, I go, I'm asking for this in the not yet. I'm holding a grievance toward my father in the past. I'm holding a grievance against my father in the gone, right? It's gone, not yet. So you could say it this way then. The gone, the present, and the not yet are not continuous unless you force it to be. You can see the past, present, and the future is continuous. And then you can make the past, present, and future continuous. What does that mean? I can make my fear and separation continuous in my mind. I can keep the old way of looking at things continuous in my mind. But let me ask you, wouldn't that be using time to imprison you to the past? That's what it means. Well, you're using time to imprison yourself. If I'm still caught up in what I thought my daddy didn't do for me in my dream, and I'm still upset about that, and I'm still using right now to think about that, and then I project that grievance into the future, I'm actually imprisoning myself. I'm limiting myself. So I'm forcing the continuity of it. I'm the one that's keeping the grievance going. Does that make sense to everybody? Right? So how could that be practical? Well, if there's something happened at work last Friday and you're still hanging on to that, that's what you're doing. It's gone. Last Friday is gone. So either you're going to use what happened last Friday right now, you're going to think about it and project it into Monday and go to work with a grievance when you go to work. Practical application. I know that ultimately the Course is talking about removing the blocks to our awareness to God and remembering who we really are as spiritual beings. But these principles also work in every situation. Do you know that it talks about how the truth has the no exception rule? And the no exception rule is that it applies to everything and it applies to everything equally. And he also says in chapter 17 that you want to work from the specific to the general. So you want to take specific situations and circumstances and try to apply the truth. Because I've heard many people on the spiritual path over the last 40 years say, I love everybody. It's a really popular saying. Oh, I love everybody. You know, but they haven't spoke to their mom in 15 years. Right? So if I was to be honest with where I have a specific issue and apply the Course to that, then I could eventually apply it to everybody. So be specific. That's what I love to do when I work with people in what I call my clarity sessions. It's like, I want you to, don't say it's just an illusion, because that's just a way of doing a spiritual bypass. It's like every time, well, you know that's just an illusion, and you're just making the illusion real. Yeah, that's also a way for you not to deal with what you need to deal with right now, right? Because the Course in Miracles, one of the Course in Miracles definitions of an illusion is that it is something that is not real, and something that is not real is something that is not permanent. So you have to go back to what does the Course in Miracles say something real is? Well, he says it's eternal. It's permanent. It's going to always be there. It's going to always exist. That's what something real is. Like real love doesn't change. It expands, but it was made to expand. So you have to like get practical with it. So saying it's an illusion just means it's temporary. It's one way you could look at it. Right? Because I was at Pride Fest yesterday, and I was watching everyone walk around. And after you've dealt with the Course for so long, and you constantly repeat, I'm not a body, I'm free, I'm not a body, I'm free, I'm not a body, I'm free. And then it says your body is a communication device. It's like right now, how are you able to hear me? I'm communicating to you through my body, right? So my body is a communication device. It's not me, it's the way I'm communicating to you. Your bodies are not you. It's the way you're communicating with me. So all of a sudden, I saw everything lit up. It was really deep. And all of a sudden, I saw it. Like the inner voice will say to me, there are two things. You can look at something or you could see it. When you're looking at it the way the world looks at it, like through the body and through we're separate and that we're people and we grow old and we just say, that's looking at it. It looks like they're seeing it is, I'm looking at communication devices that are walking around in front of me. That's what I'm really, and they're exactly alike. They just have different shapes and sizes. The normal body has all the same parts. The normal female or male body has all the same parts. So you're not even looking at anything that's different. You're just looking at different shapes and sizes. So when I'm looking at you, I'm learning that you're not the body that I'm looking at. You're the mind and the consciousness that's communicating to me through that body. And that means when someone drops their body through what we call death, that just means that they drop their communication device. You break your cell phone, it still doesn't stop working in terms of the frequencies that's available to use a cell phone. You destroy your TV, the TV station is still broadcasting. So just because a person drops their body doesn't mean that they don't exist. Wow. That makes me feel a lot better about what was perceived as a transition of my mother, father, and sister and brother. So that's why I know it's true, because anything that's true is going to make you feel lighter, make you feel more peaceful, and it's going to seem more loving. That's simple. I haven't said anything that's really complicated. But when you start analyzing the Course, then that's when it starts to get really complicated, and that's when you start to see everybody debating about what it's saying, because that's what the ego wants. It wants us to go into disorientation and confusion and conflict. Listen to me now, because it's through separation and disorientation and confusion and conflict that you feel separate. If I'm afraid of you, I feel separate from you. If I have a lot of conflict from you around you. So that means, would that mean that there would be a part of us that was invested in fear and conflict in order to stay separate? Doggone right. That's why you ended up with that person in a relationship. Because your ego picked somebody you could conflict with all the time and therefore reinforce the separation. But you don't realize that. You just think they got really pretty eyes. That's why you were attracted to them. They're just so cute. Right? Another thing, it doesn't matter how much we cover, because if you use one of these ideas and you use one of these ideas consistently, they'll lead you to the truth of all the rest of them anyway. So let's make it practical. You're going through something right now. You could be released right now. You could be in prison right now, depending on how you're interpreting right now. So when I came here, my goal was to teach, right? So that means I decided in advance what I wanted to happen. I come in the door, the next thing he says in setting the goal in that section is, then you see every situation that you come into as an opportunity to do what? Make what you want to happen, right? So I decided I wanted to come to the class. I came here to the class. So this is an opportunity to make teaching the Course happen. I say I want to forgive my mother or look at my mother differently. That's my goal. When I go over her house, then how am I supposed to look at that visit? It's an opportunity to make forgiveness happen. It's an opportunity to make what I want to happen, happen. Why is it that a person would be unattentive and bored? Because this class is not presenting to them what they want to happen. That's why. They would be here for some reason other than, I want to hear what the Course in Miracles is saying. Because if they were achieving their goal, they'd be focused in and they'd be using this opportunity as a time to really hear what I'm saying. But if it's just a means to do something else later, then I won't have your attention. Because that's not really why you're here. Any questions or comments about what I've said is relative to what I said? Okay.
Yes, like the thought I had today. It seems some of my patterns in being drawn to friends, and then seeing things turn out not so well. I was actually reflecting today in my meditation that the wounded parts of me are often drawn to the wounded parts of others in such a way that I can then play out those kinds of situations.
So the wounded part of you is drawn to the wounded part of others. Would that be using time to imprison yourself?
Yeah.
Right, because I'm not using time to free me because I'm tuned in. See, that's what I'm saying. You can always bring the Course, whatever the situation is, you can take what the Course in Miracles is saying and you can apply it to it. Like it says, you can perceive past, present, and future as continuous, and then you can make it continuous. If you'll notice, he said the exact same thing, but he said it two ways. First, the Course says past, present, and future are not continuous unless you force continuity on them. Then it says you can perceive them as continuous, and then you can make them continuous for you. That's the exact same thing. Then it says don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. So then you ask, well, how am I deceiving myself? He says, well, don't be deceived and believe that that's how it is. Don't believe that that's, I know it looks like it's continuous, but don't you fool yourself. It's not continuous unless you make it continuous. the grievance and the fear is not continuous unless you make it continuous. And if you keep interpreting right now in terms of what you went through in the past, then you are continuing it. So don't you be shocked when you keep going through the same thing over and over and over and over again. And let me make it even simpler. Then it says, well, what is our plan? Like the Course in Miracles keeps saying, let go of your plan, let go of your plan. And when people hear that, they'll think sometimes, well, is it saying let go of my plan to own my own business? No, it's not talking about that in my perception. What he says, our plan is, if this were different, I'd be saved. That our plan is, if this were different, I'd be happy. That's everybody's plan. If my mama was different, my father was different, my body was different, what I've learned was different. What a person who's asleep is doing is always trying to come up with, using their mind to come up with everything and everybody, how everybody needs to change except them. That's what he says. And only God's plan for salvation will work. I think that's lesson 71. He says, our plan is, if somebody else spoke or acted differently, if I had this different physical circumstance, then I'd be happy. That's when so when he says let go of your plan, that's what it means. It's a content thing. It's not a form thing. Letting go of my plan is me telling myself, if you all responded in a certain way, then I feel fulfilled and happy as a teacher. That's the ego's plan. That somehow or another my peace and how I feel about myself depends on how many people are listening to me, watching me in the room, how they respond. Every script that I have for you is the ego plan. So and it says, well, what do you do? What do you do then? He says, well, what you should do, instead of saying if this were different, I'd be saved, Marjorie, the Course says you should say, ask Spirit, what do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to say? And who do you want me to say it to? So I try before I say anything about it to ask Spirit, what do you want me to say? Right? What do you want? Who do you want me to say it to, and what do you want me to say? So I was sitting down in the grass, and this young lady looked at me, and she said, are you meditating? And I said, in a way, I guess you could say that. And she said, would you teach me? Would you tell me how to, give me some tips on how to meditate? Because I have some stuff that's bothering me. Now check, I hadn't said anything. I'm just sitting there. And then, so we struck up a conversation, and it was very, and I was telling, she said, well, I was trying to do it, because she tried to imitate me for a few minutes. She said, I was trying to do it, but there's so much noise and so much going on around you that I couldn't do it. This was after 3 seconds. By the way, it wasn't even 10 seconds. That didn't work. I said, she said, well, how are you doing? I said, I'm actually using the noise and the sounds of the crowd to meditate on. That I'm not actually resisting the noise. I'm actually seeing the noise as something that I'm incorporating in what I'm feeling. That way I'm not in resistance or separate from it. And then we talked a little bit more, and then she just spontaneously said, you are so cool, and again, that need that I would have to be an instrument of love and truth was met by someone who, was open and receptive to it. I didn't have any idea who that was. She was the one that said to me, is that meditation? So why am I telling you that? So that you would know those whom you are supposed to be a messenger and a minister for in your experience will be sent to you. That's why a lot of times with parents, you're the last one to get the point across to your children. I know you're programmed to think you should be the ultimate guide, but you all, if anybody's a parent out there for any length of time, you know that many times your children will hear something that you've been telling them over and over again from anybody else but you. Absolutely. And it'll be the same thing you said. Like in teaching classes, sometimes I'll see people and I haven't seen them in a while, and then they say, where you been? They say, I went to India, right? And they went to India for weeks, and they spent thousands of dollars on the ticket, and they went through all the things, and they would say, and they said, the guru said you needed to release the past in order to have peace. And then I go, I just said that last Sunday. You could have saved yourself $3,000. But they needed to hear it through somebody else beside me. And then people tend to pay more attention to something they put an investment in. You put that kind of money into something, your butt's going to probably try to pay a lot of attention in what you do when you come into something for free and you don't have to make any kind of personal investment. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that's the challenge. People want you to do stuff for free. Like, I'm not charging you to come in here, but that also can make it easier not to focus on what you're hearing because you don't have to make any real personal investment other than your time. So think about that for a minute, right? So sometimes we are set up that we have to make investments and stuff before we actually get a payback because then we'll get serious. So when you're reading the course, again, I'm not giving you my interpretation, I'm just giving you a translation. See, when you translate, you don't change the content, but you might change the form, right? So then it says, don't be deceived and believe that's how it is. To believe, I love this, to believe reality is what you would have it be. To believe something is the way you want it to be, according to the way you want to use it, is delusional. So for me to believe you are the way that I want you to be, according to the way I want to use you, that's delusional. You would destroy time's continuity. What? You are destroying the continuity of time. There's just one time now. He says, well, you're destroying the continuity of it. Then the Course in Miracles explains how. Again, I don't understand why people analyze and try to figure out the Course. It's right there. The first half of the sentence defines the second half of the sentence, right? He says right there, you destroy time's continuity by breaking into past, present, and future for your purpose. And that's the third time. He said the exact same thing another way. Have you noticed that? He goes, so how do you destroy the continuity of time? You try to break it into the gone, the now, and the not yet for your purposes. So then he goes, well, let me tell you how you're doing that. Again, you don't have to figure the Course out. He says, well, how are you doing that? He says, well, you would anticipate the future based on your past experience. Right? I anticipate what's going to happen in my next relationship based on the experiences I've had in other relationships. We try to anticipate what's going to happen this evening based on what happened in the past. You know, I want to go to Jazz in the Park, so I'm tempted to judge what might happen in Jazz in the Park based on my past experiences of Jazz in the Park. That's one of the reasons I want to go. Right? I'm anticipating it, but check this out. You would anticipate the not yet, the future, on the basis of your gone experience. That's why he says it's delusional for you to deal with me as if I was your past boyfriend. That's not fair to me. Don't judge what's going to happen between me and you based on the relationship you had with the guy in the past. I'm not John. I'm not Paul. So you got to meet me without projecting on me your past experience with somebody else. He says, if you don't bring the past with you, you can see who the person is right now. I have to remember that with people all the time. Earl, this is not somebody you were friends with in the past. This is not the person. Don't think that this friendship has to go the way the last one went. This isn't the same person. So don't be delusional. You have to consciously stop and do that. Because your mind will tell you it's wisdom to use your past experience to judge how they're going to do. The Course in Miracles says, you know what? That's not wisdom. That's delusional. You're in a world full of delusional people. Because that's a very common thing that people do, especially the older they get. Wow. So that means I have to also do that with my partners and my friends. That means I have to every day be willing to have a clean slate with my child, with my boss, I'm going to make it practical. Don't you want it practical? Yeah, you want it practical. So the Course says you anticipate the future on the basis of your past experience, and what do? He says then you plan for your future accordingly, right? And he says, but when you do so, and then I go, when I do so, what do you mean? What are you talking about by doing so? By doing what? Anticipating the future on the basis of your past experience. By doing so, what you are doing is you're aligning what happened in the past and the future. Right? I'm going to take the past, I'm going to project it in the future, so I'm not allowing the miracle, which could intervene between the past and the future to free me to be born again. What in the heck did that mean? It's so simple that it eludes us. if I am basing what I'm going to do, what's going to happen between us in the future based on the past, then I'm not allowing right now to intervene between the future and the past, because I'm too busy using the past to figure out what's going to happen in the future. What I'm not using right now to allow a new experience to happen, because I'm judging it by the past. So isn't that funny that the Course in Miracles calls us being in the now a miracle? Think about that. So A Course in Miracles is a course in now. Right. It's a course in now. It's a course in how can I be in the now. You know, being at this place for 23 years, every time I sit in here, I'll have all kinds of memories of classes, especially before COVID. Right? So I have to constantly remember to not look at my classes now based on what happened in the past, because then I won't be able to appreciate you right now. So that's practical. You know, if I want, and I also know if I'm hardcore on the course, people who are not really in the course are going to stop coming. I'd rather have one person that's really enthusiastic about the course than have 100 people who don't pay any attention to anything that's happening. I'll say that again. I'd rather have one person show up on Sunday who really wants to hear what I got to say, and what I like to say what the course has to say through me, than have a room full of people that don't want that. My point is, I have to be in the now. And so when I have thoughts about numbers and stuff like that that come up, you know what the voice for God says to me? You remember I said that they're going to be sent. And the people are going to be sent into your life. It might be 10 people one week and it might be 1,000 the next, because it's not your charisma and your ego that's drawing them to you. They are being sent by me. Wow. Now, do you think that makes me feel more relieved? Yes. So that's how I know it must be the truth. Because God's answer, according to the Course in Miracles and the workbook lessons, it says God's answer will always give you some form of peace. So if you come up with solutions that don't give you any form of peace, I would suggest you're not hearing the voice for truth in you. If you walk away feeling worse than you did in the beginning when you're trying to figure things out, you just wear this X out your interpretation of everything you just heard, because you didn't hear it interpreted correctly. So there's no such thing as you being mad and upset and right, even though you're innocent if you're mad and upset. All it means is something or somebody's not acting out your script. Hello? Hello? All anger is an attempt to make somebody feel guilty. I'll make you. And then you feel guilty and you say, okay, I'll do it. Right? So anger is an attempt to make somebody feel guilty. And anger is something's not acting out your script. And nobody's acting out my script. That's what you call your sad days. Instead of saying, this day was really, this is a horrible day, you just say, nobody acted out my script today. Nobody responded to my anger and did what I wanted them to do. Because you know, everyone's here to serve me. And he literally says that we are mad because we want everybody to serve us. He says that a dream is a perceptual temper tantrum. I love that statement. That the reason why there's so much anger in the world is because there's so many people that are wanting to be served the way they want to be served, right? And it's not happening the way they want it to happen, so everybody's mad. That's where all the divisions come from. You know, so again, practical application. Then the next line he says, if you are free of your past and future, then you're free to be born again. So to be born again is to let the past go and look without condemning your present. And the person goes, well, how do I do that? I'm glad you asked. I'm going to give you the answer. Do the workbook lessons. Apply the workbook lessons. Do the workbook lessons. The workbook lessons are there for two purposes. The workbook lessons in the Course in Miracles, he says part one is the undoing of the way you see based on the past. And then he says part 2 is the acquisition of the new way of seeing things. So in my 40 years, I keep saying that I've had so many opportunities to work with so many people, and I cannot tell you how many Course in Miracles students I have met who say they're Course in Miracles students and say the Course in Miracles is their path. And they're innocent, but they'll also say, I've never read the book. I've never read the text from page 1 to page to the, then they say, what, have you done the workbook? No, I haven't done the workbook either. Okay, well, how can you say you want something, but you don't want the means to achieve it? You say you want the piece that the Course in Miracles is wanting to give you, but you don't want to study the Course in Miracles. You know, I don't know how to bake a cake, and I get the recipe book, but I won't study the recipe, but I expect the cake to be in the oven. I like the recipe book from God, especially if you like chocolate stuff. Okay? Right? So and why do I say this? Because my classes are primarily aimed at people like me that love A Course in Miracles and they want the Course in Miracles and it's their path. Even though I'm glad that anybody watches my classes, whether they're into the Course in Miracles or not. But I enjoy the most, after all these years of studying this stuff, talking to somebody who really wants it. It's a radical concept. It's a radical concept. And so the Course says, are you ready to be born again? Yes. Well, what is it that the miracle enables you to do? He says, well, the miracle enables you to see that person without the past. It's a miracle if you see a person without the past. And so when you're seeing somebody without their past, that's you allowing them to be born again. Do you want your mother born again? Do you want your father born again to you? Do you want your children and your friends and anybody you have any kind of grievance with? Do you want them to be born again? Then you have to see them without the gone. Because they made a mistake and they made that mistake in the past. If you are a lousy partner, but you really want to be a more loving partner now, would you want that person to keep judging you by the way you used to be? That was one of the things that was interesting to me after getting a divorce, was that one of the ways that my ex-wife would have a call for love to me was whenever I would see her, she would treat me like I was the same person that I was when she was married to me 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You know what I'm saying? It was like, so you really thinking all this time that I'm the same person that you had the relationship with at that time. So I kept wanting to be born again. I kept on going, pay attention to how I am now. I'm listening now. I'm being more compassionate now. I admitted my errors and my mistakes out of my ignorance now. Let me be born again so we can have a new relationship with each other. But do you know why people hang on to their old perceptions of what they think and who they think you were? The Course says that we judge because we're trying to convince ourselves that we understand what we're looking at. So she had to relate to me based on the past because that's when she thought she knew me. So to hang on to the perceptions of me that she had then would give her the illusion that she knew me. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm gonna keep on asking. Yeah. It's like that's why it's hard to let go of those images, because without those images, you have to admit you don't know that person. You would have to really deal with the fact I'm not the same person that I was then. And so I didn't get offended by it. Why? Because I know I'm not the same person I was then. So I didn't have to get defensive, right? So that's how you can tell when you really changed, is that when people say stuff that usually would upset you, it just rolls off your back and you don't really even pay any attention to it whatsoever. Because I knew my goal was peace. And so I was going to use the situation of us seeing each other as an opportunity for us to have more peace. Because I would always say, I want us to have more peace if for no other reason other than the sake of our children. I would love our children to see their parents having a peaceful relationship with each other. And that's literally what I would say. You know, my goal is to use every situation we're in to have peace, so that everybody could benefit from that peace. Wow. So therefore, if I started to feel defensive by something that was said, I go, okay, don't forget, how did you say you wanted to use this situation? You said you wanted to use this situation for peace. So even though you might feel defensive because your ego is getting triggered don't use the past right now and interpret it in the past. Y'all be right back where you were then, and then you'll project it in the future, and you will keep going through this over and over and over again. Practical application. Practical application. So I want you to be born again every time you walk in the door. By every time you walk in the door, not judging you by what I think and experienced in the past, to see who you are and to let you be born again. So are you ready to be born again? Are you now here's the last thing I'm gonna say as I complete. Do the same thing to yourself. Do the exact same thing to yourself. Are you allowing yourself to be born again? Are you still looking at yourself and thinking about yourself in terms of the errors and mistakes and things you did in the past? And looking at yourself in terms of what you did in the past and then projected it into the future and then keeping your personality and your habits and your patterns going? Are you letting you be born again every day when you wake up? So I'm going to stop here. But I'm going to do a quick recap. Take the bag upstairs. Bring it back down like we used to. All right. This is not what I'm demanding of you all. but this is the only thing I can use. But we're doing it on a love offering basis. I do it on a donation basis. I'm a full-time teacher of the course, and I don't have any guilt about asking if people want to share. Okay? That's another myth, is that somehow or another that is something wrong with asking. The truth is, if you'd like to make a financial contribution, if you'd like to make a financial expression of appreciation, I sure do appreciate it. I'm a full-time teacher and learner of the course. Those of you online, if you like to do it, you can use Zelle, you can use Venmo, you can use the Cash App, you can use PayPal, and all you need is my email address. It's Earl Purdy at earlpurdy.com. Earl Purdy at earlpurdy.com. And for those of you who would like one-on-one sessions with me, they're called clarity sessions. And those online and in person, and you can, and those of you who would like to do that. If you'd like to find out more about that, show you how we did today, how to make it practical in situations that you're going through so you can see a change, then you can go to my website, earlpurdy.com. That's P-U-R-D-Y, earlpurdy.com. And you have more details about the session, and you can self-book a personal one-on-one session with me online. For those of you who are open to it and open-minded, I've also practiced astrology and numerology for many, many years, and I'm available for that way too. The course says that Spirit uses whatever you've learned as a way for you to get its message across. As a matter of fact, it was astrology and numerology that led me to A Course in Miracles. So before you judge what somebody else does, remember that everybody's on their own individual path, and everybody's not going to do it in the exact form you do it in. So those who are open and receptive, then I'm available for that too. And you can go online and self-book a session with me. Every Thursday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time on Facebook Live, on the Earl Purdy page on Facebook, I do what I call Hardcore Course in Miracles. Hardcore Course in Miracles are Course in Miracles classes that are especially geared towards Course in Miracles students who are Course in Miracles students. Okay, in other words, they made the decision, they're studying it, they want to go deep. It's not necessarily for someone who's still trying to decide whether or not that's something that they really want to do, even though you're welcome, of course, to watch. I upload all of my classes on Facebook. I think they're on Facebook. You can watch them on replay on the Earl Purdy page. I also upload all of my classes on YouTube. So I literally have hundreds of classes on YouTube. What's cool about YouTube is that you can slow it down, speed it up, and you can even use closed captions. So I love that. You can listen to a 1-hour class in 30 minutes. You can control the speed of it. Well, guess what? You can control time. Right? That's just another form of controlling time. Right?
Basically, yes.
Yeah. So because It's the repetition. So I invite you to watch and listen to each class at least 4 times. At least 4 times. It's the repetition that allows you to remember what you're hearing. You know, so that you don't go through the course blackout as soon as the class is over. Right? Yeah. So I want to tell you, I love this. I love being a means for this. I love my body being used for this, because it's the one time I feel like I am doing what I am incarnated in this dream to do. You can tell when you're fulfilling your function by how you feel. So if you're on a job or you're doing something in your life and it doesn't thrill you, you are not looking at it correctly, or you're doing the wrong thing. God's will for you is perfect happiness. And so if you're doing it right, then and looking at it right, you feel more peace. Don't make it more complicated than that. The ego is going to try to make it more complicated than that. So you don't want to perpetuate the past. So that's Thursdays at 7 p.m. Mountain Time on the Earl Purdy page on Facebook. Then on Sundays at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, I do another Facebook Live, the one you're at right now, A Course in Miracles. And if you're in the Denver, Colorado area, then you can come and drop by and check it out in person. We got a couple of new parts of myself looking at me right now, you know, and their communication devices. And I'm glad that you're here. Thank you for showing up. Appreciate you. Those of you online that's new, I appreciate your reactions. I got over 3,000 reactions to my video on Facebook last month that they told me about. And it was good. It was good to see that Spirit knows who needs to hear whatever I'm saying. Last week, a young lady drove all the way in from Oregon just to come to the class. And I think she said she just turned 40, in her 40s. And she said, you know, I've been watching you since I was 16. Wow. Blew my mind. She said, I've been watching your classes since I was 16 years old. And I'm so thrilled to get a chance to actually. So you never know. My point is, you never know. You never know who you're reaching. You never know who you're affecting. And actually, that's probably a good thing. Probably keeps your ego in check. Right? Right? Yeah. It probably keeps your ego in check that I don't know. Because it's the people that I consciously figured they needed my help, whether they asked for it or not, that's probably in the most therapy. Because if a consciously selected miracle can be misguided, you know, you sitting up there and deciding who needs your help and who you're gonna help is probably your ego and not your real true self doing it. So that's on. So you can do it on Facebook and on Sundays 1 p.m. Mountain Time Facebook Live, 1555 Race Street, 1555 Race Street. Here in Denver, Colorado. Love to have you. Love to have you here. All right, so here's a quick 1-minute recap. So just take a breath. I know. And just take advantage of the fact that So just remember that you can use this time to release yourself from the past, to release yourself from pain. But you could use time to imprison yourself. You can tell how you're using time by the way you feel. By the way you feel, you can tell. You can tell how you're using time by the way you feel. By the way you feel. You can tell how you're using time by the way you feel, by the way you feel. What you went through and how your past has been doesn't mean that's not how your future has to be. Past, present, and future, we were told they're not continuous unless we force continuity on them. So try to practice not seeing people in terms of what you think you've gone through with them in the gone. Can you try to let the people in your life that you say you love, can you let those people be born again to you this week? Take a breath, take a breath. Time can release as well as imprison, depending on your interpretation of how to use it. Don't make your past continuous if that past, especially if that past was not joyful for you. So what should you do? The Course says, only remember the loving thoughts. If you're going to think about the past, only continue the loving thoughts. Only remember the loving thoughts. Only remember the loving thoughts. Only remember the loving thoughts. If you're going to remember the past, only remember the loving thoughts. Don't be deceived. What you've gone through in the past doesn't have to keep happening in the future if it's something that imprisons you or causes you fear. So stop anticipating what's going to happen in the future based on what you went through in the past and then planning for it accordingly. The Course is asking us to stop aligning the past with and making that our future by realizing that each day, each moment is a clean slate. Every time you wake up in the morning, it's a clean slate. Every day is a clean slate. Unless you keep on looking at things in terms of the way you learned to look at it in the past. If you keep looking at things the way that the world and the separation and ego has taught you to look at things with anger, guilt, and grievances, seeing yourself as a victim, not letting somebody be born again only when you change. So what was cool in that conversation that I had with my ex-wife was, at some point she went, you know what, I am willing to see you differently. I'm willing to look at it in a different way. I'm not able to let go of what I perceive as my grievances completely right now, but I am willing to look at it another way. Well, that was her, in her mind, let me be born again. We will let each other be born again because I don't want separation. My goal was to have peace. So when I sat down with her, I knew that I had to use that situation as an opportunity to make what I wanted to happen. And what I wanted to happen with her was peace and joy, because I can remember when that is all that we felt for each other and toward each other when we were seeing each other correctly in the earlier parts of our relationship. And that loving experience that we had together, that was what was real. And anything that happened other than that, that was the illusion. That was the past. So we had to let ourselves be born again to each other. So you let yourself be born again to you, and pick the people in your life that you know you need to let be born again to you and to them. That's the practical application of the principles of the Course, which is love. It's a miracle if you will just be in the now. Be in the now. So tell yourself this workbook lesson. My present happiness is all I see. Say what? My present happiness is all I see. Say what? My present happiness is all I see. Let's acknowledge us for being so cool. Come on. Give yourself I know acknowledging us sometimes can be the hardest thing in the world, and it shouldn't be. I'm born again. Yeah. Hey, I told you, put some clothes on. I love y'all.